On this episode of Local Film Talk, we're chatting with the cast and crew of the short film Pallbearers. Subscribe to the Local Film Talk channel on YouTube or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Now let's do it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Local Film Talk. This is the show where we talk to people making films here in the Triangle about the projects they're working on and hopefully get some advice to help you with what you're working on. I'm Bob Walters at Triangle Life TV.
And I'm Conrad Arnold at TriangleFilmCommunity.com. And today we're speaking with the filmmakers behind the film Pallbearers, which has been all over the festival circuit this past year and was one of the top films in FilmSpark 2015. Which just had a screening of the encore of the best of those films this past Friday.
Best of FilmSpark. It was like the top 8 as voted by the audience. Top 8 films of the whole festival, and we had the screening this past Thursday. That would have been what, the 4th or the 5th?
It was actually this past Friday.
Friday.
February 5th.
I was close. I was there. That's the important thing. At least I wasn't standing outside the theater on Thursday going, where is everybody?
And you were confused because you were time traveling a day into the future.
It's what I do.
It happens to the best of us, man. Yeah, it was really cool though. We were at the Cary Theater, right there in downtown Cary, which holds about 160, 170 people.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful venue, great projector, and it was really nice of them to let us use their space.
Oh yeah, the Cary Theater is awesome, and we got about 75 people there to watch these films. Some for the first time, some for the second time.
And some of them people who had been on our show. We saw the guys from Dag Type Films who did Oh Crappy Day.
And Lance Bacon.
We saw Nathan Rittenhouse.
Right.
So that was cool. It's cool to see people who we'd had on the show coming out to participate in the Triangle Film community.
Yeah, I love seeing people from the film community coming out.
It was a potpourri of people who have been on the show and people who we hope to have on the show in the future, as well as a lot of other family, friends, cast members, and hopefully some members of the public who are just interested in the local film scene. We'd like to see more of those people out there too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And by the way, I noticed your poster frames there are still empty. What gives?
Yeah, people be slacking off. I got these poster frames. Some of you may remember from last week's episode. Was the first time I had these hanging up here. Got these picture frames. They're 11 by 17, which is, of course, the standard size for a mini movie poster. And I was hoping that some members of our local film community who have made posters for their projects, and I know you people have because that's a standard reward for on Kickstarter. If you have some extra posters lying around and would like some free publicity, send them to us. We'll have to put like an address in the show notes or something, or you can bring it to Conrad or I at one of the meetups or a screening. But give us your poster, and you might get to see it up here on the wall, especially if you're the first or second person to give us one. But it'll be up here on the wall in the episode for all of perpetuity. We'll be sure to talk about it, give you a little plug. It's free advertising, people. How can you turn down free advertising like that?
You cannot.
You can't. Not if you want to get the word out. Not if you want your work to be seen.
And we can set it up so that they can be mailed to you in care of Triangle Film Community.
Say that again?
So we can have people mail their posters to Triangle Film Community to give to you.
There we go. Send your posters. If you can't get it to us in person, send it to
the address will be in the show notes.
Yes. And Conrad will get it to me, and I will get it on the wall, and then you will see your work right there, and we will be sure.
The film community also loves envelopes of cash. Just saying.
Yes. Hopefully, you maybe your poster just happens to be a collage of $100 bills. That'd be a great poster. I would love to have that poster on my wall. So let's do it, people. Send me your poster made of $100 bills, and we will be sure to talk about it. You might not see that one, but we'll talk about it. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now. I'm trying to get people to send me some posters for the wall. And Conrad, of course, you're busy with Triangle Film Community stuff. What events we got coming up?
Next up on the docket for Triangle Film Community, February 17th, which is a Wednesday, we have a networking meetup happening. That'll be at 7 o'clock at the Bar Louie over in Briar Creek.
So yeah, so that's what we got coming up. Hopefully you guys can participate. But for now, I think we've run our mouths long enough. Let's get to our conversation with the cast and crew of Pallbearers. Actually, I think the first I saw it was when it was in Film Spark
Right.
back in September. So how long has it been on the festival circuit?
I guess we finished post-production in
We finished
May.
post-production really in like late March, and then submitted to a couple of festivals, with North Carolina being the focus, just because it's a very North Carolinian film, and we
Also
did Film
easy to
Spark.
drive to.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. That is also great. We did Film Spark. We screened a film in Raleigh at Film Spark in September, and then we found out that we would also be playing at Carborough Film Festival in Carborough, North Carolina in November. And then we found out in December that we would be playing at Praxis Film Festival, which is in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And we played there last Friday, the same day as the Film Spark Encore. The same exact day. So we had driven all the way, all of us, minus Eric, had driven all the way to Goldsboro that morning, like bright and early, and then drove back to Cary, because we're from Winston, so it was a lot of driving, but it was worth it just to have it screened twice in one day, which was two of the best projections we've also seen, which was great too.
Right.
Yeah, I was sad to have missed that. I heard that went well.
Yeah, it was
Right.
great.
That explains why you guys were a little loopy.
So good.
You know, we were very loopy. Gosh, we had been going all day long.
Yeah. But it was just good that it found a home here in North Carolina. I mean, with it being 23 minutes long, it's not exactly a friendly short film for festivals like Curate, Curate, right? And so that was one of our biggest worries going in. But I think we're very satisfied with it playing anywhere. And thank you to Conrad and anyone else out there who is able to find time for 23 minutes and program it and find the film interesting.
The jury about 10 people. And Pallbearers was one of the top 8 out of all the films that were submitted. So, congrats to you guys for making something that was good enough to be in that best of lot.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that was a whole other thing. Is just being because I think we at the Film Spark we won the audience award, which was great. Just because there's lots of awards, but knowing that your audience enjoyed your film is huge.
Right.
And we also the same thing happened in Praxis. We actually screened in the student film block for over 150 students, high school students, and they voted for Pallbearers as their favorite, which was just great. Knowing people enjoy your film is just.
And you never would have thought 120, 150 high school students would have been so responsive and receptive. They were laughing, they were gasping, they were asking questions at the end. I was really surprised. It was very rewarding to have that. I was like, when they told me, they're like, oh, there's going to be 100 plus high school students. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
But it was great. It was
They'd be texting the whole time.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So one thing that I think is kind of cool, I noticed it at the Best of Film Spark screening last week, also at the Carborough Film Festival, and I think the same thing happened at the original Film Spark, is that you guys all showed up to all of the screenings. And
Right.
when they called people up to talk, it wasn't just Chaz that went up there to to answer questions and everything. You guys all got up there. You're one big unit, and you go to every screening you can, it seems. You seem like a really tight-knit group of cast and crew.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like I said, we all graduated from high school together. We've been doing
For the
this,
most part.
for the most part, except Eric. Eric came in late in the game, but
Eric
Yeah, kind of a late bloomer.
So Eric and I became
Right.
friends at NC State, which NC State's a very small film community as well, within the school. So there's not many of us. So it was nice to, meet someone new. But he was just a great addition to the team. But the rest of us have known each other since childhood, so that was really great.
right.
Okay.
And so it's a continuation. Each time it's like I write for Jacob, I write for Jen, I write for Eric, and then we all jump on board and we go in. And with each new film, we garner new talent and new additions. This last film we did was the first time we've actually really had sound crew, which was a big deal for us. I mean, we've always struggled with sound. I mean, we barely scraped by, But this last film, we had a sound crew: Joe Honig,
Pablo
Bobadilla.
Bobadilla.
He's gonna get me for that one, not being able to pronounce his last name. But I mean, these people are really gracious to give us their time and come out, and so it was also nice to be able to manage more than our normal.
Just the 4 or 5 of us.
Just the 4 or 5 of us to really kind of be a little more professional, maybe.
Right.
Well, you guys touched on writing, so why don't you tell us a little more about how the story came about? You know, where the inspiration for it was, and your process too.
And especially considering you guys have all been working together for so long, do you all have input in the story? Like, does Jacob get to say, I want to play a character like this?
Oh, this is going to get good. We'll let Chaz start here.
I'm trying to think. At the point that I wrote Pallbearers, I would say no. I think I'd come up with an idea. I'd just let my subconscious give me images. Sometimes I have a clear theme or concept that I want to write about, and I write for that. Or sometimes I just let the subconscious images flow, and I write, and then I try and find, what I'm really trying to say with the piece as I'm writing it. And Pallbearers was one where I knew it was very clear to me what it was going to be about, and so I just kind of catered the atmosphere, the coffin, every little element to fit into that theme. And as far as character goes, and speaking about it, I do write with Jacob in mind. So let's say I have a character and I write, and so I was fairly certain that Jacob would be William Willard, and our other actor Brooks Addis would play Leland Day. It's been a while. Leland Day, and so I would write for them, and he and I would have long conversations while writing. But I think most of it he wasn't involved in the creative process as far as writing goes, and I think that's something we're starting to work out together as it's happening now. We're doing writing a project for school called A House in Walkertown, and it's about family betrayal, booby traps, money being hidden in the house that's booby trapped, and this character who's kind of forced into by his mother, is like a strange mother, to search the house for this hidden money. And I think Jacob and I are having more conversations than we've had in the past about character in the writing phase, which is something that I enjoy. He can speak more on that process, I'm sure.
Well, Jacob?
That's your cue, Jacob.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think with Pallbearers, I think Chaz, he wrote it for us, and then we kind of jumped in. But Chaz has this thing where he writes a lot, and he's always got a different project that he wants to work on, and he's always throwing them out to us. And of course, me and Brooks, we attach to it because we just want to act. We just want to get out there and do it. And so anytime he tells us what it is, we're just like, all right, let's do it. Let's make it happen, like whatever. And then sometimes he'll be like, you know what? That project's not going to work. I'm not going to go that way. And then me and Brooks are left devastated because we were so ready to play these characters and do whatever with those characters. We've been all creating our own mindset on those characters or whatever. So he's gotten better with not getting us too married to an idea until he's really ready to do it. And so that in and of itself is good. But with Walkertown, I think we're definitely getting to where we've dialogued back and forth. I've read the script a couple times, and Chaz and me have talked about it, and I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, I mean, I always trust Chaz's judgment, and then I like to just whatever he's given me, I like to just add some what I see the character as too, and he's usually pretty receptive to it, and we talk about he wouldn't do this, or I don't know, what do you think about this, and it's just constant back and forth and talking about the character, and that's even through the filmmaking process. We're always dialoguing, we even to the point where they think I was being lazy, but I always wanted to be in the front of the coffin or whatever because on the back, I can't remember one position was better than the other, and I always wanted to be up front, I think, because I felt like William Willard was the leader. He would be up front taking charge, leading, whereas in the back you're always busting your shin on the coffin as you walk, and so Brooks never wanted to be in the back, and so I claimed it as a character motive. He needs to be up front because he's the leader. Things like that. I think we're just constantly going back on. So
it's a beautiful argument, but I guess the answer to the question is we're learning, learning to collaborate more in pre. I think collaboration is super important to me in production and in post, or otherwise I'll honestly screw up. I will if I don't have someone to say no or yes or agree with me or really support me in that manner. But in the writing, collaboration is something that we're learning to work through. Because early on I wanted to guard my work in a way, It's very acting is super vulnerable. Everything that we do is film is a vulnerable art form, and so when writing something, exposing it before you feel like it's ready is something that I was kind of nervous about, but something that I've learned over the past maybe year to really kind of let go of, and I think it's been a rewarding decision to do that. It's helped me more than I thought it would.
Right. Now, what kind of considerations did you guys have to make? Because Pallbearers is a period piece. It takes place, what, about 80, 90 years ago, which is not an easy thing to do on a very low budget. So what kind of considerations did you have to take into account? How did you have to shape the script in order to accommodate the budget but still get the feel you wanted? And what were some of the things you did during the production process to help add to the feel of the time period without trying to spend a lot of money?
I think literally just about everything. We didn't have a costume designer. I designed the costumes, and with Jacob and Brooks, we kind of went out and kind of picked out what we thought would work and what looked correct. And so we had a little bit of money, and we spent it where we could. The coffin was period design that her dad actually made for us. He crafted it together. Shout out to Jimmy Silly.
That's very cool.
One thing we were worried about was, like if we're doing a period piece, we want to have some kind of production value, and the truck really kind of came in handy there for no other reason, maybe than to be production value. And so we knew someone in the area with a Model A.
I don't know, one of the two. Very
old truck, and it ran for a little bit before it stopped. That's another story. Let's see, and just writing it. I mean, I said, I know I can do this. 2 guys in the woods with a coffin. I can make that period. It'll be simple. The woods don't have to be made to look period. And so we made it happen. And then we had actually shot an opening scene in downtown Lexington, North Carolina, which still looks about 80 years old in certain places. And we shot it. We shot it next to train tracks, and it was this scene where William Willard comes up to Leland Day's character and pretty much pitches the idea to him and tells him, he wants him to go do this. And we shot it, and we had so many problems with sound.
Yeah, there were motorcycles in the background, and that didn't work.
we were shooting next to train tracks, and the what's the name of the film? The Midnight Rider film.
I don't know.
The big catastrophe that happened in Atlanta with people being next to train tracks and the legalities of that. We just felt like it was not.
Great.
It was just not a good idea to have that in our film and be where we were in making this film, and so we cut that scene out, and I actually rewrote, I don't know, maybe 6 months after production, the new opening with the old man character coming in, and I think it works a lot better. And so we had to find a house that looked the part, and we were able to. We were able to find an 80-year-old house. Thankfully, this area is just dripping to the core, saturated with like old and antiques, and so we just grabbed what we could.
And in a lot of cases, all you got to do is ask. Most people out there are pretty willing to work with you if you just have the balls to ask them, and they think you're a pro.
Exactly.
And a lot of people like having their stuff in a film. You tell someone that you want their 80-year-old truck in a film, and they're like, okay,
right,
maybe.
And
if you can get it running, go for it.
Yeah, the truck worked. It worked for a little while, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and we were really bummed out. And so, thankfully, our solution to that was just hitching it up to a tractor and pulling it by a tractor.
Movie magic.
And one thing I've learned is if you have a picture car, it's gonna break down. Any set I've worked on at school and they've had picture cars, they break down.
Nice.
And so.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask Jen, when you said to your dad, I need you to make me a coffin, I assume you pressed that with, Dad, we're making a movie. Will you make me a coffin?
Yeah, my dad is actually, he's a general contractor / overall do it all. He can do anything, and so we always say that production design was his real calling.
He missed his calling in life,
and that he's doing this like by accident, and so I think he gets more excited about it than we do. So I said, hey, and he's very into antiques and into history, and that's a huge part of his interest. So when I say, hey, I need a real life-size coffin from the 20s, he's like, okay, I'm on it.
He was very happy.
And then he had it done like the next day, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And he's like, no, come here, I want to make sure it's right, and we got to make sure everything's like how you want it.
We sized it up for the actress. We got her measurements.
But I think
Nice.
he loves it. I mean, I don't even think I have to preface it with anything. I just ask him, I need this specific thing from 1935, and he's on it. Or he'll just come to me and say, I have all of these antiques from like the 20s in case you want to do another 20s movie. So
Yeah.
I think he just loves it.
He
which I
works some
think
magic.
is great. And even though he's, doing something else, I think he has just as much passion for it as all of us. So it works out nice.
Tell
That's
him,
so cool.
tell him where the coffin is now.
Oh, the coffin has actually been turned into a bookshelf at the actress's house that was in the coffin. So she took it and made it into a bookshelf and has it in her house.
That's so creepy.
At least it went to good use, I guess.
It's morbid.
I
But
was
even
expecting you guys to say, "Oh, it's a table we got our computer on right now."
Oh yeah, that would
That would have been cool
Well,
too. It's your new
yeah.
coffee table.
If you want another piece of trivia, the actual funny story, the opening scene that we had to reshoot where he's laying in the bed, that was a brand new house and she was just moving in and she didn't have a bed. All she had was a flat mattress, but we needed the bed to be elevated. So we didn't have anything to put under the bed to make it elevated like a real bed, so we stuck the coffin underneath it. So he actually had the coffin and then the mattress, and so that's what he was laying on in the beginning of the film. So,
IKEA could take inspiration from that. That's
yeah, there you go.
it's very, I guess,
Actually, I remember seeing in a magazine probably about a few years back how to build a coffin out of IKEA furniture.
Wow, interesting.
interesting.
Wow.
Somebody's got time.
Yeah.
You don't call it,
Yeah.
but you don't call it a coffin. You call it a Flukendorsal, I think.
of course, yes.
And you assemble it with nothing but Allen wrenches.
But
I love IKEA.
speaking on period, I would even say that Jacob and Brooks made gains in character to meet period. I mean, I wrote dialogue specific for period, and I feel like they were able to reach out and grasp that dialogue and really kind of make it feel of a certain time. We were watching outtakes the other night, and we were listening to Jacob speak in his William Willard voice, and we were cracking up. And it wasn't even because it was like funny. It was just we haven't heard that in such a long period of time.
Because it was a scene that we had cut, and so it's not one that we hear. I've got the whole film memorized because I stared at it for months straight. So, but hearing anything out of the general like script is like hearing that voice is just kind of like, oh, that's funny. But and I know
What'd you have
Jacob,
to
I
do
think
to,
Jacob got some slack for it.
Jacob, what'd you have to do to get that voice and that dialect? Was there a lot of research there?
I mean, I'm pretty Southern in general, so I more or less just really just dove straight into Southern and didn't try to not be Southern, if that makes sense.
Didn't try to
Not
fight
that he's
it.
just a Southern. Yeah, didn't try to fight it. And then also, William Willard, I don't know if it really, I hoped it would translate a little better on film, but he's got an underbite. And the underbite just helped get you into that way of talking just real quick, just because I don't know, it's just how it does it, I don't know. And so for me, it was just part of the Eric's falling apart over there. And so for me,
We lost one. Oh no.
he's gone. It was part of the character, is just the way he walks about and carries himself, and there's no other way to talk than just talk that way as William, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
And the same can be said even for Eric's score. I remember thinking early on too, like the kind of music that would complement the piece would need to sound regional and need to sound very very old in some ways, because a lot of our collaborations with Eric up until this point has had electronic feel or had a had a very different vibe than this. And so I think where he took it helped us sell the time period as well.
I definitely want to talk to Eric about his music, because it did really seem to fit the period. Tell us a little bit about putting that together. So this is not your first project with these guys. How long have you been working with them?
So I've been working with Chaz and Jen for about 3 years. I originally was involved in a project with another group, but we were in a film competition. I saw one of their films called Blood. They released that about 3 years ago, and immediately emailed Jen and said, that was your best film. Like, that was awesome, and you should check it out. It's a great film if you're watching.
Don't watch it. I think I took it down.
I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, come on. You got to leave it up there for people to...
But it's good.
I
But
have so much embarrassing stuff online. You got to let people watch that.
No
Say,
way.
this is what not to do, folks.
But I have the easy job. They give me something that's already so well thought out that all I have to do is not mess it up and sort of bring out the emotion that I feel Chaz and Jen intended in the film.
So do you I'm guessing they come to you, they tell you what the movie's going to be about and kind of what they want the feel to be. At what point do you start writing? Is it still while they're writing and they're shooting that you start composing the music? And if you do start coming up with your themes ahead of time and everything, what's involved in taking what you've come up with and tweaking it to match the edit of the film?
At least for Pallbearers, things didn't come together in any sort of specific way till I actually had the footage. But Chad sent me a beautiful soundtrack. If you've heard it, the There Will Be Blood score. That was composed by the guitarist of Radiohead. I forget his name. But,
Johnny Greenwood.
Johnny Greenwood, yep. So that was his inspiration. So he was kind of saying like, hey, I'm thinking some sort of feel like this, which for me was a bit of a challenge because, like they mentioned, I have more of a background and I used to play metal in high school, and then I kind of switched over to electronic music. So sort of time period music was something that was outside of my venue, but I kind of played around with it for a few months, got to know the instruments I wanted to use digitally, and actually, with some guitar stuff, I would literally take a bow and play it across the guitar to get a violin-like sound. And just over the months, kind of refined the sounds, and then when they gave me the pieces, just a back and forth, kind of get ideas down, and Chaz and Jen kind of listen to it and can help me kind of refine it and direct it in a way that the film was intended, and that's synergistic.
So how do you put that together? One thing I was going to ask was how much of it was real instruments and how much of it was, digital stuff, but also what type of software do you use?
So I use Ableton Live, which is kind of a newer one. Most people use Pro Tools, but most of it, at least for Pallbearers, was digital. It just takes a lot of time to get it to sound real. And some of the stuff that isn't digital, you wouldn't even guess is there. Like a lot of the bassy sounds that you hear growing are actually like old samples I have of like washing machines. Okay, I was like the weirdest 18-year-old. When I was in high school, I would just record these sounds around my house. My parents.
That's what sound geeks do.
Yeah, like where do we go wrong with this kid? Like, what is he doing?
What was that, Conrad?
I said Eric is just a 1980s German industrial musician.
There you go. That's
very good. Nail on the head.
But what's interesting about the score is it's so Eric. It's because like we said, his work was so like electronic and very different from what this piece was, but he was able to take the period and take the material and also stay really true to what his sound is, which is what we love, and that was one of the things that I was super happy with. I mean, I love what he was able to make with the score. It really kind of, like I said, showed off what we made.
Yeah, nice. It was a great experience working on this film, especially because every time I felt like we communicated about it, it was like an and one, like we were kind of feeling each other out and kind of growing the idea. There was one point, though, I remember when we were trying to make really specific changes, and we were obviously like 100 miles apart, right? So they're in High Point, I'm in Raleigh. So they actually sent me a picture of their view on what was it, Adobe Premiere, or was it Final Cut?
It was Adobe.
And they drew in like, okay, here we need to be quiet.
I did do that. Oh god, I did.
No, it was a good idea. It made perfect sense, right?
Yeah, but I completely forgot about that.
We're
and
both
Eric texted her back and said, "Why did you write in Sharpie on your computer?" That was a terrible idea.
No,
that's really, an expensive choice there.
Yeah, I mean, I would take like the first one he sent, and then he would give me a revision, so a second draft, and I would have the second draft, and I'd have the first and the second, and I'd be like, see this like peak here? I don't know what this instrument is, but like I like it, so like move this here, and like I had just graduated that December, and would have been in Raleigh up until that point, but since then I had moved, so I wasn't able to we weren't able to meet with Eric in person quite as much, so occasionally we'd have to make trips to Raleigh, but it made it a lot more difficult. But actually, ironically, the first film that Eric scored for us, he was in Sweden. Yeah. So I think we can accomplish anything if he can score a film from Sweden.
Oh yeah.
So
wow.
So that was I mean, at this point, I think Eric scored maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 films for us, ranging from 3 minutes up until the longest, which was Pallbearers, and which our new film will be even longer. So I think with each one, we get a better understanding for like our communication
Process.
abilities.
Everything's growing. Every element.
Because it's hard for us to like communicate in terms that he like understands, but he's just so good about interpreting our nonsense into actual information.
We're
very
very mutually literate. I feel like it's nonsense. I honestly feel like I'm babbling when I speak to you.
I think me and Eric have a great dynamic because I put down what I put down on film, and then it gets sent to Eric, and he has no idea what he's going to get from my side of things, and I have no communication with him throughout the entire process. And it's the same way back. Like I put down when I'm going to act, and I have no idea what it's going to sound like with my acting and with his music and how that's going to highlight the emotions of that scene. And so it's great for us to, I think, because we both don't know what we're going to do, but we know that when both our stuff gets put together, it's going to be really good. The way Chaz and Jen work as a mediator between us, it's really interesting for me to I can't wait to see what Eric does with each score. And I think he's mentioned to me, he's always it's really interesting what you've done with the acting in this, and then things like that, and so we have this complementary relationship, but we really don't have any communication during the creative process of it.
No, I think you guys your work complements each other well. As a whole group, you're everything just seems to really gel. You can tell that you guys have been working together a lot. So, and I'm excited to see what you got coming up next. So real quick, for the people out in the audience, we always like to, try to learn from people's experiences. What were some lessons you learned on this production? Let's start with just in order of on my screen. Let's start with Jen and Chaz.
Okay. What I learned the most is you got to find the fine line between having enough people to not be so concerned, have to be concerned about every little thing, but you also
not bog things down.
Right, and I mean, obviously, I was doing sound and cinematography and gripping, the whole 9 yards. So you have to find the right amount of people to where you can cover all your bases, but not bog down your production. Because with less people is more flexibility, and I think that finding that medium for you and your team is just the most important thing. But also just, I guess, finding, I've said this a million times for all the people that have been at the Q&As, but you have to find people that are just as passionate as you are. Right. So if you're not working with people who love what they do, then you might have problems. But I think that's the biggest learning experience, not just from Pallbearers, but from our past 5 films, is just everyone's got to be committed to each other and to film as an art to have a productive final piece. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
I like it.
Definitely. I guess the big learning curve for me on Pallbearers was in dealing with writing, and just the experience of, like I spoke earlier, guarding my work versus really kind of letting people in the pre-process. Looking at what I did on Pallbearers and seeing seeing how I had to communicate things so much more. You have to go through much larger strides to communicate when you've guarded it for so long and then you let it go versus having people in so early in the game. And I don't think, actually, I mean, even mentors at school, I didn't have anyone read Pallbearers. I had a few people read it, and I obviously had the team read it, and then we jumped into it. And I don't think the film suffered from it, but obviously, like I said, I mean, earlier on, it's a long film, and it's not festival friendly because it's long. And so maybe if I would have been less guarded and had more input early on and chopped and fixed and configured, maybe it would have been something that could have been shorter, or it might have gone a different angle. But like I said, our process is completely changing every time, and I've opened up more as far as writing goes, and I believe that's really kind of benefited us on this next film that we've moved into.
It was the same in post also, in editing. As Pallbearers, we got done with the edit and we sent it off. We didn't do any consulting with pretty much anyone, and I think that we ended up with a 23-minute film from a 11 to 12-page script. So it's kind of I think if we would have done things a little bit more, I guess, less just okay, let's just do it now without consulting anyone about anything, I think that it could have been a little different, but overall, I think it turned out all right.
So I guess Jen and I are both kind of saying broadening our circle a little bit.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, was like from the beginning when you first started working on the script and had the idea and everything to what we ended up seeing, were there any big changes? Was the ending different or anything?
The ending stayed the same. We dropped out maybe two scenes, just mostly dialogue scenes that I felt like dragged. Um, like Jen mentioned, the script was 11 to 12 pages long, and I have this tendency, and this is something that I'm still trying to figure out for myself, and I don't know if it's because I cover the hell out of something and then want to edit it together, or if I just leave too much breathing time, or we all just have this slow burn of a film. But they say like 1 minute per page of script, and for some reason when I write something, it never articulates into that. It just won't do it. It's like 2 minutes per page, and so I have to really be aware of that. And that was going into Pallbearers was something that I didn't really think of, and so we ended up with these long scenes that I didn't necessarily intend to be as drawn out as they were. There's the scene where Jacob is speaking to the coffin, and Brooksy is watching him. Leland Day is watching him from the distance. That was we came up with that like the day before. I knew that there was something missing in the script. I knew that there, because the William Willard's character was so distant for so long, and maybe motives weren't there. And so I thought, well, what if we have this very surreal scene in the middle that really kind of turns things, where we get to see maybe a little bit of insight to maybe this character's paranoia and craze, and maybe just a little subtle hint at what happened, and dropped it on the team, and we did a little bit of prep, and we went out and shot it. And I think it's my favorite scene in the film.
Yeah, me too. It was just one that it wasn't in the script at all, and the biggest issue with the film was, at 23 minutes, it's still almost, it's got to be long enough for these two guys to have enough time to like gradually climb this horror mountain. And so if you just go straight from, hey, we just met, to, hey, I'm crazy, like, that didn't really work. So we had to find the medium between long and drawn out, but brief. So that became a little bit of a problem. So we ended up cutting a scene or two, but then we added that scene, and I think adding that scene was like probably the best thing that could have happened. And as far as Jacob goes, I know he's going to talk next, but he also had a lot of like, I guess not ad-lib, but we just kind of let him go with it, and I had the camera like, this close to his face. So he definitely, we're very flexible, and Jacob is flexible, and Eric's flexible, and everybody just kind of is down to just do what it takes, and I think that was a huge positive for the film.
Right. So what did Jacob? What was the lesson you took away from the film? I'm sorry. Were you talking, Conrad? Did I interrupt you?
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
Was right for the film. It kind of reminded me of like some of the early work of David Gordon Green. His films were slower back then. So I don't know. I felt for what the film was, that was the absolute right pace for it.
Good
to
hear.
Quick, it would have felt artificial. That was
sure.
That's what I hate more than anything, is the artificial nature. And I always grill Chaz when he gives me an idea. I say, we got to do this, 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 or it's not going to work. And he always gets so mad at me. But like you said, something cannot be artificial, and that's like always my biggest fear personally. So it's interesting to hear that you had that, which is just great for us.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because sometimes with some audience, we'll watch the film and we'll say, it's too long. People are getting bored. Because they're not interested. And then with some audiences, it'll be like, we really nailed it. And so it's going back and forth. And I'm not sure. I guess it's different for different people, but that is good to hear.
Well, you're not going to be able to please everybody.
Of course.
That's the problem.
Yeah. But you didn't have any robot ninjas in it, and that was a little disappointing.
Yeah, no.
It was in the script. It was in the script.
Explosions either. I had a problem with that. No explosions.
I begged for it.
I thought about having a scene where they come across some old like 1920s moonshiners who were kind of creepy, but we were pushing into
that would have been
too
interesting.
much time. Yeah.
Okay. So Jacob, lessons learned?
I'm gonna steal what Chaz has been saying here lately. I'm gonna mess it up, but basically, the pain is temporary and film is forever. Whatever, some variation of that. But come to step prepared. I think I hate the first scene of the film. It just grinds me every time I see it. The scene where they're sitting on the beach and they're talking. It was the first day we filmed, and I don't think I was fully grounded in character or really understood the concept of the film really in that scene. And so I've definitely learned to come prepared, for every scene and be 100% on your game because it's going to make it in the film regardless, or it could potentially. And so you got to be good. So.
All right. Camera's rolling. You got to be prepared for that to end up in the final cut.
Yeah, it's just interesting how much our actors, grow. Because we filmed from June until October, so in that time, it's like when you spend every weekend with that character. I'm not an actor, but I imagine that it's like as you go along, you become more and more involved, and it kind of, and even on my end, like the first scene that we shot to the last scene, I had really figured out the atmosphere we were going for on my end also. So I think we all kind of like grow on a film that it shoots for a long period of time rather than okay, we're shooting a film for 2 days, so it's a little different.
We worked heavily on reshoots too, and I'm surprised we didn't reshoot that scene. I think because that scene's location was so deep in the woods, we had to go down that huge hill, so getting something out there was so difficult that I think we were just like, screw it, we're not going to do that again. But reshoots are a big thing that we work on. We got that ongoing joke, like we're just going to have to reshoot the first scene that we do because nobody's going to do good enough for it. All right.
Well, I watched an interview with Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's talking about Gangs of New York. And how when he was prepping for that, they were building the set and getting the movie going and whatever, and he was hanging out with Daniel Day-Lewis a lot, and they were all hanging out. And about 4 days before filming started, he walked back past Daniel Day-Lewis and said, "Hey, how you doing?" or whatever, and Daniel just, and he was in character and he was ready, and Leo was like, "Oh crap, like it's game's on, this is it, this is real." And Leo said that the scariest day for him is always the first day on set. And I mean, he's Leonardo DiCaprio and he's top of the line. But even for that, so if Leo gets scared on the first day, I feel like I'm all right to get scared of the first day filming. But
You're
still
in
on
good company.
Right.
So Eric, what did you learn on this one aside from an entirely new musical style?
Yeah, well, there's that. But I would say one thing that's taken me time to learn because of my own bias is the value of silence in a film. And it can be, at least with Pallbearers, I felt a temptation to always have something for a scene. But there's the creek scene a few minutes into the film where we kind of went back and forth, and I had written something several times, but I think it was actually Chaz who made the decision, let's just see what it sounds like if it's completely silent. And you get that break, and it just builds drama in a way that having music from start to finish couldn't really accomplish. So silence is definitely very important for having contrast.
Sure.
Right. It's funny because, the X-Files is back on TV, and I always remembered that being a show that from beginning to end there was just non-stop music. There was almost never any silence or anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
And by contrast, and I didn't even notice it because it worked so well, but when you watch No Country for Old Men...
I was about to say it.
Yeah, there is a lot. The silence is dense in that film.
I think there's only one scene that actually has music when he's at the convenience store telling the guy to flip the coin. I think that's the only scene in the whole movie that has any music, and otherwise it's just silence. And for that picture, it works. So it's all about figuring out the tone of the project you're working on and what's going to make it most effective.
Definitely.
I know for me, when editing, it's like sometimes if the audio, specifically for Pallbearers, which audio is just nasty on, but a lot of times we would hope to okay, our audio isn't very good, let's have Eric mask it with music, and ironically that scene, the creek scene at the beginning, is cringeworthy for me, just because there's so many technical issues that I hate, but and then we decided no music, and I was like, no, that's the worst, but I think it is true. And another thing with Pallbearers is the diegesis and the sounds that are in the world that they're in, and the bugs, and all of that. It was just that also lends itself to the atmosphere, and even though those were very problematic at times, I think they added to it as well. So I think the silence mixed with the atmosphere of the film, mixed with Eric's often subtle but effective score, leading to higher, more powerful scores, the right way to go in terms of a formula for the sound.
I think it's a decision to center your score around cicadas.
Yeah.
Smart move.
Yeah, and that year, the year that we shot that, the summer of 2014, was I think one of the big cicada years. It's every 17 years or something, and there was just cicadas everywhere, literally everywhere. The scene where Jacob is squatting in front of that building and he's talking about his sister. We reshot that scene 4 or 5 times because there were cicadas and they were relentless. Jacob is having a really serious moment here and he's very quiet and put together, and there's just these cicadas like just screaming at such a high volume. There's so many of them. It was very, very difficult, believe it or not.
Jacob would get good at, there was one in one scene, there was only one cicada in the tree, and Jacob would get good at throwing rocks and sticks, and you'd hear him, Jacob would throw it, and he'd go, "Wah," and he'd fall, and then we'd say, go, and we'd rush in, and we'd do a scene, and we got on time to where he'd get back in the tree about the time we were cutting, and so we'd just have to knock him out again, and then go, and then he'd fly back, and we did this until we finished the scene. It was crazy.
But I know we revisited that spot. We revisited that spot in the woods at least 5 times. I know for a fact. So that was definitely a tough scene. But I think in the final cut that we used, there's actually one cicada that rises in the end that just happened to work out really nicely. So I guess sometimes nature is on your side, and sometimes it's not.
Well, like you said, that's one of the tricks to doing a period piece is to shoot out in the woods, because the woods look the same 100 years ago as they do now. The downside is that you have much less, almost no control over the environment around you.
Mm-hmm. And we're dealing with very, very bad sound, amateur sound. It was like very hard to really manipulate. And the location that we shot the entire final, I guess, climax of the film, that was filmed in the woods, where a highway actually lines the woods, not too far. So we were having really bad, like, tractor trailers blowing by, and it was a disaster. So there's actually 2 scenes near the end where I had to recreate the entire thing from Foley. And that was the creek scene where Brooks goes through Jacob's pack. That whole scene was recreated in sound from me, and then the coffin when he reveals the girl in the coffin, all of those sounds were Foley as well, just because the audio was just so nasty. So there's a lot of work, needless to say.
Now, did you like the end result with that? Do you think you'll do more Foley work and ADR in the future?
We tried actual ADR, having them re-record some of their dialogue, and actually only one line made it in, and it's like a very, very short line, and I still hate it. It sounds awful, but ADR is a tough thing, just because we tried filming in like a lot of different locations to try to match that sound, but we'd get too much of an echo, or we'd get too much of a reverb, or whatever it was. So the ADR we kind of shied away from, but the Foley actually worked out really nice.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how easy it was.
Yeah, because I just layered up a bunch of different sounds to recreate that. Just him walking on the rocks, and then him opening the pack, and the glass bottle hitting the pack, and just very subtle things that were missing until I went back and re-added them. And I filmed those in my backyard. And we actually had some birds in my backyard, so I recorded them one day, stuck the birds in there, and it just worked out. So Foley's definitely difficult, though, and it's time-consuming, but I think it worked out in the end, for sure.
Good. Well, I think it's about time to wrap things up. Did you have any other questions, Conrad?
I'm good. We hit on everything that I was going to ask.
I mean, we could talk about this stuff all day. I just love the process, and you guys have been really great to chat to.
Well, you did mention that the shooting took you from June to October.
Yeah, we did. We filmed about every weekend from late June until early October, because the leaves started to change here, and obviously we shot in the woods. So. Yep, and I was actually living in Raleigh at the time, working that summer in Raleigh, and so I would drive home on Fridays, film Saturday and Sunday, drive back to Raleigh on Monday morning for work. So it was about an every weekend thing with a few exceptions, but it was just really Saturday morning, wake up, shoot. Sunday morning, wake up, shoot, and then we shoot all day until sunset, pretty much. And yeah, so it was definitely, the shooting regimen was really, really, really difficult.
About how long did the post take you?
The post actually was a little bit rushed, because I got an entirely new editing suite set up around December. So we had finished around October, and I put it on hold because I was going to graduate that fall. And then so I pretty much picked it up again in December, early January, and finished by like mid-March maybe. But at the time I was editing 8 hours a day full-time, because I had just graduated, so I had some free time. But so, unless you can commit that many hours a day, it's a little bit more of a process. So.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, the final question I have is, what are you guys working on next?
So we are in post on a film called 1,000 Acres, which I've mentioned before is the name of like a Pulitzer Prize-winning best-selling novel, which has nothing to do with our film, and we didn't know about. So it shows how like unread we are, embarrassingly enough. So we're kind of just debating on whether or not we're going to do a title change or not. But the film deals with this like anarchist cult or commune, and this guy who kind of infiltrates undercover as like the new member, and what he's doing is he's looking for his ex-lover who kind of disappeared there. And we have the old man at the beginning of Pallbearers. His name is David Price, and he's really great. He's playing the cult leader, this kind of pragmatic, domineering,
Very like.
Southern man. You don't drink, you don't do drugs on this farm. You're anti-government. You're this, that, and the other. He's trying to create a place. Jacob plays the protagonist going in undercover as the new member, and Brooks Addis, who plays William Willard in
Leland Day.
Leland Day in Pallbearers, plays like the right hand man to the cult leader, the kind of the strong arm of the cult. And so it's this idea of mystery. I wrote it at a time when I was in a film noir class at school, and so this idea of a mystery of trying to uncover something has really been itching at me to write, and so this is kind of what I wrote and involved with it. And we filmed it at a huge farm in Greensboro. What's it called?
It was actually Summerfield Farms in Summerfield, North Carolina, which is a gigantic farm with a ton of land, and we had a connection there, so we were able to shoot there. We shot from most of all of August, every weekend in August, a little bit into September, but we tried to keep the shooting much shorter than Pallbearers, even though the film was going to be longer. But we had a much larger cast. We had maybe 5 or 6 key players, and we had some sound guys come help us out. So it was it ran a little bit smoother than Pallbearers and a little less strenuous, a lot less sweating and bleeding.
We even had a day where there's a bunch of extras, which is really interesting.
We brought in a handful of extras.
Big thanks to any of those people who are watching who came out for free to help us out to be cult members. And one thing that I'm really excited about with this film is it's not a period piece, but it has like a 70s vibe to it, and I'm experimenting myself with what the sound for this film will be, and I'm thinking kind of an electric guitar, kind of like Celtic-y Led Zeppelin, Blue Haze, kind of played in backwards sound that I think might be interesting for Eric to experiment with the score. So I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah.
Are you excited for that, Eric?
Definitely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, this is where the process begins. He's just kind of like, he's probably going to send me. I know you've been listening to Grizzly Bear and some other kind of. We discussed. I think the word we settled on was smoky.
Smoky.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Kind of like that vibe. So I know what you mean.
Okay. Cool. We can't wait to see it. Are you?
We're close to that now. So.
Think we'll get to see that at this year's Film Spark?
When's the deadline for that?
We're going to figure that out at the meeting this week, aren't we, Conrad?
We are.
You guys will be the first to know when we decide that.
Well, please do, because that'll be my first approach at trying to hit a deadline.
Yeah.
Which means I have to hit an earlier deadline so Eric can hit the deadline.
Yeah. We need deadlines. We need them.
Give me a deadline, y'all.
I'm pretty sure this time it won't be 2 weeks before the festival.
Yeah, that'd be great. No, I remember seeing it and being like, yeah, let's do this, and then we just submitted it. I think it kind of randomly, and turned out it was the first one we screened out, so it was actually turned out pretty good. But I'm hoping that we can get 1,000 Acres back into these North Carolina festivals that really were the first ones that were gracious enough to screen Pallbearers for us. So it's definitely nice to find a place at home that we can share.
We have a Facebook page. What's the Facebook page called?
I was going to say, tell us where we can find more of your work and everything.
Well, there's facebook.com/Pallbearers if you want to check that out. And then there's facebook.com/1,000
Acres Film.
I think it's 1,000 Acres Film.
There's a lot of
bad. I can't remember.
Right.
Guys, send me the link and I'll just put it in the show notes.
Oh.
That'll be our cheat sheet.
Yep, it is. It's 1,000 Acres Film, and on there you can see like a brief synopsis and some stills that we've put out. And I'm hoping to. I think we talked about even releasing a scene, just a clip from the film, just to kind of garner some interest. And it's different than Pallbearers, but very similar due to the fact that we have similar actors, and I just think it'll be really fun for everyone. So. Okay.
Eric, you have a website or a Twitter account or anything you want to promote?
I am not on the Twitter. I do have a pretentious website that is.
I don't even know.
I'll describe it that way. It's literally just my name, ericbosberg.com. So that will link you to Chaz and Jen's films that I've worked on, and then a little blurb about a film that I'm working on the side. It's about a bike trip I took across the country called American Shift. So I raised a little money on Kickstarter. I did this thing over the last summer. So I rode from North Carolina to Oregon, and it's a film about my experience. It's a little bit about urban planning as well, which sounds like a boring topic, but I promise it's actually very interesting. And so that's just
it has explosions, right?
Oh yeah, plenty of explosions. Like,
okay.
it's
Good.
mostly explosions. I mean,
Pedaling away from an explosion in slow motion. You don't look back though. Cool guys
yeah,
don't look
yeah,
back.
pedaling away and towards explosions. They're just all around.
Nice.
But yeah, that's in progress right now.
Okay. And Jacob, do you have a website or a Twitter account or anything?
I don't have a website. I'm on IMDb Pro if you ever want to look me up, but no,
Yeah, we
no,
do
no
all
website or anything like that.
Okay.
But
most
no,
of Jacob's stuff you can find on us, on all of our stuff, because Jacob's been in all of our work. So my website is jensilly.com, and it's pretty much a reel for me, Jacob, and Chaz.
Yeah.
So we all work together.
And
constantly,
Jacob does work with other people. He's hungry. He wants
Believe it
to.
or not,
Yes,
yeah.
he wants to act.
No, Jacob's had plenty of experiences with other crews and sets and TV shows, so he's definitely ready to go.
I'll be okay. I'll plug this. I'll be on TV next Sunday night for Mercy Street.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
There you
I
go.
can't say why or what, but I'll be on there somewhere towards the end of that episode.
Nice.
So
Check it out, people.
there you go.
Well, cool. I appreciate you guys all coming on and taking the time to talk about Pallbearers and all your various projects. I think 4 people is our record for guests.
Hold the
Alright.
record.
Well, it goes on YouTube, so we'll make sure we get more
Yeah.
people watching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It goes on YouTube. It'll stay on YouTube, and yeah, people can go back and 10 years from now when you guys are making big ass feature films in the theater, people can always go back and watch this episode and say that's what they used to be like.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for letting us babble. And,
Yeah, thank you.
Taking the
Yeah,
time
thanks
to
for coming on.
really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. And, thank you to everybody who's watching, everyone who watched live and everybody who's watching later on YouTube or listening to the podcast. You can, if you want to be the first to get this episode and all our other episodes, you can just subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Local Film Talk YouTube channel. If you don't have time to watch, but you can listen, you can always subscribe to the Local Film Talk podcast on iTunes. We're Local Film Talk on Twitter. You can email us at localfilmtalk@gmail.com. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm at Paradise Bob on Twitter. Conrad runs the Triangle Film Community, so you can go to trianglefilmcommunity.com to see what he's working on, the events he's putting together and everything. But that pretty much does it. This has been another episode of Local Film Talk. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.